Hello all, before we begin this episode, I would just like to ask our listeners to like and subscribe to this channel as it will help us out. We are fairly new on YouTube and it would help us a lot if you did so. You can also comment if you prefer. Thank you.
Do you ever get that strange feeling at night that you're being watched?
Or maybe you heard a noise in the woods you can't explain.
What is the truth about UFOs? And where are the ones that have crashed?
Every week, join husband and wife duo, Felicia and Ian, as we seek the truth. Recording in the mountains of the Appalachians, we, the paranormal lovers, will bring you stories of hauntings, cryptids, UFOs, and more.
You can find us on iHeart, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and most other podcast services. Follow us on Instagram and YouTube by searching for The Paranormal Lovers in the search bar.
Welcome in the Great Khan's tent. History, literature, and storytelling. Do you like cool clothes? Like showing off what you listen to while you drink your coffee, tea, or even milk? Do you want people to remark, "Wow, what a cool person"? Then why not take a look at the In the Great Khan's Tent merchandise shop. We have cool designs and great items for an affordable price. I'm sure you won't be disappointed. Links to the store are available on the website, on this episode description, and on our various social media accounts. We can even email you the link if you prefer. If you have any suggestions, comments, or complaints, please be sure to email us at all lowercase inthegreatkhans@gmail.com. That is inthegreatkhans@gmail.com. We would love to hear from our listeners. In this episode, we continue the story of Sultan Umar ibn al-Numan and his sons Sharkhan and Dau al-Makan, and the strange and remarkable things that happened to them with nights 47 and 48. After leaving the army in a valley and going on a reconnaissance mission by himself, he winds up in a meadow with a monastery where he spies beautiful maidens and an old woman. This part of the story is a moral tale, with the great and heroic Sharkhan being bested by the as so far unnamed main woman character, who seems to be a princess of the Greeks being stationed in that monastery. It speaks of the disadvantages of being prideful and knowing that no matter how great you are, there's always someone who is greater or can bring you down to earth. For a first in this series, wrestling appears, with the sport being popular in both the modern-day nation-states of Iraq and Iran. Although mentions are made of 3 wrestlers who were popular in the author's or storyteller's time period, I have not found any biographical descriptions of them. As he continually loses to absolute credit to Sharkhan, however, it does seem like he rolls with the punches, being quick to adapt to his new situation. With this episode, we are reaching the first milestone of our main series, as we have almost reached the 50th night. There's only 950 or so nights to go. What does the future hold for our hero? Stay tuned for the next episode to find out. A'udhu billah minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Compassionate, the Merciful. Praise be to Allah, the Lord of the 2 worlds, and blessings and peace upon the Prince of the Prophets, our Lord and Master, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whom Allah bless and preserve with abiding and continuing peace and blessing until the day of the faith. To proceed, the lives of former generations are a lesson to posterity, that a man may review the remarkable events which have happened to others and be admonished, and may consider the history of people of preceding ages, and of all that hath befallen them, and be restrained. Extolled be the perfection of him who hath thus ordained the history of former generations to be a lesson to those which follow. Such are the tales of 1,001 nights, with their romantic stories and fables. Scheherazade continued. He set off alone after ordering his Mamluks and his personal guard to pitch camp with Dandan. So he rode on along the valley till a fourth part of the night was past, when he grew weary and sleep overcame him, so that he could no longer spur his horse. Now he was used to sleep on horseback, so when drowsiness got the better of him, he fell asleep, and the horse paced on with him half the night and entered a forest. But Sharkhan woke not till the steed smote the earth with his hoof. Then he started from sleep and found himself among trees, and the moon arose and lighted up the two horizons. He was troubled at finding himself alone in this place, and spoke the words which whoso says shall never be confounded, words which never bring shame on those who use them. That is to say, there is no power and no virtue but in Allah the Most High, the Supreme. But as he rode on in fear of the wild beasts, behold, the trees thinned, and the moon shone out upon a meadow, as it were one of the meads of paradise, and he heard therein a noise of talk and pleasant laughter, such as ravishes the wit of men. So Sharkhan dismounted, and tying his horse to a tree, fared on a little way till he espied a stream of running water, and heard a woman talking and saying in Arabic, "By the virtue of the Messiah, this is not handsome of you, but whoso speaks a word, I will throw her down and bind her with her girdle." He followed in the direction of the voice, and saw gazelles frisking and wild cattle pasturing, and birds in their various voices expressing joy and gladness, and the earth was embodied with all manner of flowers and green herbs, even as says of it the poet in the following verses: "Earth has no fairer sight to show than this its bosom time, with all the gently running streams that wander over its face. It is indeed the handiwork of Allah Omnipotent, the Lord of every noble gift and giver of all grace." Pleasure was expressed in the varied songs of the birds, and the place was abloom with plants of all kinds, as a poet has described in these lines: "The beauty of the land lies in its flowers, and the water that flows freely over it, created by the power of the Almighty Allah, the giver of gifts, generous to the generous." Midmost the meadow stood a monastery, and within the enclosure was a citadel that rose high into the air in the light of the moon. The stream passed through the midst of the monastery, and there nigh sat 10 damsels, like moons, high-bosomed maids, clad in dresses and ornaments that dazzled the eyes, as says of them the poet: "The meadow glitters with the troops of lovely ones that wander there. Its grace and beauty doubled are by these that are so passing fair, virgins that with their swimming gait the hearts of all that see ensnare. Along those necks, like trails of grapes, stream down the tresses of their hair. Proudly they walk with eyes that dart the shafts and arrows of despair, and all the champions of the world are slain by their seductive air." All of them were virgins, as the poet describes. The meadow gleams with beautiful white girls. Beauty and grace are added by their unique attributes. All fascinating virgins, virtuous, flirtatious coquettes, their hair loose flowing like grapes on a trellis. Their eyes enchant, their glances dart as arrows. Swaying as they walk, they slaughter valiant heroes. Sharkhan looked at the 10 girls, and saw in their midst a lady like the moon at its full, with ringleted hair, and shining forehead, great black eyes, and curling brow locks, perfect in person and attributes, as says the poet. Her beauty beamed on me with glances wonder bright. The slender Syrian spears are not so straight and slight. She laid her veil aside, and lo, her cheeks rose red. All manner of loveliness was in their sweetest night. The locks that over her brow fell down were like the night, from out of which there shines a morning delight. She was perfect in all her delightful qualities, fitting the description of the poet. She is lovely to me with her wonderful gaze. Her figure puts to shame Shamhai spears. Her cheeks, as I look at them, are rosy red, and she is mistress to all the charms of grace. It is as though the hair above her face is night surmounting the dawn of delights. Then Sharkhan heard her say to the girls, "Come on, that I may wrestle with you, ere the moon set and dawn come." So they came up to her one after another, and she overthrew them one by one, and bound their hands behind them with their girdles. When she had thrown them all, there turned to her an old woman who was before her, and said, as if she were wroth with her, "O wanton, dost thou glory in overthrowing these girls? Harlot, are you pleased to have got the better of these girls? Behold, I am an old woman, yet I have thrown them 40 times. So what hast thou to boast of? But if thou have strength to wrestle with me, stand up, that I may grip thee and put my head between thy feet." The young lady smiled at her words, although her heart was full of anger against her, and said, "O my lady Dahat al-Dehwai, wilt indeed wrestle with me, or dost thou jest with me?" "I mean to wrestle with thee in very deed," replied she. Night 47. Morning now dawned, and Scheherazade broke off from what she had been allowed to say. Then, when it was the 47th night, she continued, "I have heard, O auspicious Shahanshah, that the girl said to the old woman, 'By the truth of the Messiah, do you really mean to wrestle with me, Dahat al-Dahwai, or are you joking?' 'Stand up to me then,' said the damsel, 'if thou have strength to do so.' When the old woman heard this, she was sore enraged, and the hair of her body stood on end like that of a hedgehog. She sprang up whilst the damsel confronted her, and said, 'By virtue of the Messiah, I will not wrestle with thee, except I will be naked, O baggage!' So she loosened her trousers, and putting her hand under her clothes, tore them off her body. Then taking a handkerchief of silk, she bound it about her middle, and became as she was a bald ifrit, or a pied snake. Then she turned to the young lady and said to her, 'Do as I have done.' All this time Sharkhan was watching them and laughing at the loathly behavior of the old woman. So the damsel took a sash of Yemen stuff and doubled it around her waist, then tucked up her trousers and showed legs of alabaster, and above them a hammock of crystal, soft and swelling, and a belly that exhaled musk from its dimples, as it were a bed of blood-red anemones, and breasts like double pomegranates. Then the old woman bent to her, and they took hold of one another, whilst Sharkhan raised his eyes to heaven and prayed to Allah that the damsel might conquer the old hag. Presently the former bored in under the latter, and gripping her by the breech with the left hand and by the gullet with the right, hoisted her off the ground, whereupon the old woman strove to free herself, and in the struggle wriggled out of the girl's hand and fell on her back. Up went her legs and showed her hairy tout in the moonlight, and she let fly 2 great cracks of wind, one which smote the earth, whilst the other smoked up to the skies. At this Sharkhan laughed till he fell to the ground, and said, He lied not who dubbed thee Lady of Calamities. Verily, thou sawest her prowess against the others. Then he rose and looked left and right, but saw none save the old woman thrown down on her back. So he drew near to hear what should pass between them. And he said to himself, Whoever called you Dahat al-Dahwai did not lie. You should have known the girl's strength by what she did to the others. And behold, the young lady came up to the old one, and throwing over her a veil of fine silk, helped her to dress herself, making excuses to her and saying, O my lady Dahat al-Dahwai, I did not mean to throw thee so roughly, but thou wigglest out of my hands, so praised be God for safety. She returned her no answer, but rose in her confusion, and shamefacedly walked away out of sight, leaving the young lady standing alone by the other girls thrown down and bound. Then said Sharkhan to himself, To every fortune there is a cause. Sleep fell not on me, nor did the steed bear me hither but for my good fortune, for of surety this damsel and what is with her shall be my prize. So he turned back and mounted and drew his scimitar. Then he gave his horse the spur, and he started off with him like an arrow from a bow, whilst he brandished his naked blade and cried out, Allah is most great. When the damsel saw him, she sprang to her feet, and running to the bank of the river, which was there 6 cubits wide, made a spring and landed on the other side, where she turned and standing, cried out in a loud voice, Who art thou, sir, that breakest in our pastime? Who are you, fellow? You have interrupted our pleasure, and what with thy whinger bared, as thou wert chasing an army? Whence comest thou, and whither art thou bound? Speak the truth, and it shall profit thee. Do not lie, for lying is of the Losel's fashion. Don't try to lie, for lying is one of the qualities of base men, but tell the truth, for this will do you more good. Doubtless thou hast strayed this night from thy road, that thou hast happened on this place. So tell me what thou seekest. If thou wouldest have us set thee in the right road, we will do so, or if thou seek help, we will help thee. When Sharkhan heard her words, he replied, I am a stranger of the Muslims, who am come out by myself in quest of booty, and I have found no fairer purchase this moonlit night than these 10 damsels, so I will take them and rejoin my comrades with them. She said, I would have thee to know that thou hast not yet come at the booty, and as for these 10 damsels, by Allah, they are no purchase for thee. Indeed, the fairest purchase thou canst look for is to win free of this place, for thou art now in a mead, where if we give one cry, there would be with us anon 4,000 knights. Did I not tell thee that lying is shameful? And he said, The fortunate man is he to whom Allah sufficed, and who hath no need of other than him. The wise man, Sharkhan told her, is one who learns his lesson from others. By virtue of the Messiah, replied she, did I not fear to have thy death at my hands, I would give a cry that would fill the meadow on thee with horse and foot, but I have pity on the stranger. So if thou seek booty, I require of thee that thou dismount from thy horse, and swear to me by thy faith that thou wilt not approach me with aught of arms, and we will wrestle, I and thou. If thou throw me, lay me on thy horse, and take all of us to thy booty, and if I throw thee, thou shalt be at my commandment. Swear this to me, for I fear thy perfidy, since experience has it that as long as perfidy is in men's nature, to trust in every one is weakness. But if thou wilt swear, I will come over to thee. Sharkhan lusted after her and said to himself, "She does not know that I am a champion of the champions. Impose on me whatever oath thou deemest binding, and I will swear not to draw near thee till thou hast made thy preparations and sayest, 'Come and wrestle with me.' If thou throw me, I have wealth wherewith to ransom myself, and if I throw thee, I shall get fine purchase." Then said she, "Swear to me by him who hath lodged the soul in the body, and given laws to mankind, that thou wilt not beset me with aught of violence, but by way of wrestling, else mayest thou die out of the pale of Islam." "By Allah," exclaimed Sharkhan, "if a Qadi should swear me, though he were the Qadi of the Qadis, he would not impose on me the like of this oath." Then he took the oath she required, and tied his horse to a tree, sunken in the sea of reverie, and saying in himself, "Glory to him who fashioned her of wild water." Then he girt himself and made ready for wrestling, and said to her, "Cross the stream to me." She said, "It is not for me to come to thee. If thou wilt, do thou cross over to me." "I cannot do that," replied he, and she said, "O boy, I will come to thee." So she gathered her skirts, and making a spring, landed on the other side of the river by him, whereupon he drew near to her, wondering at her beauty and grace, and saw a form that the hand of omnipotence had tanned with the leaves of the jinn, and which had been fostered by divine solicitude, a form on which the zephyrs of fair fortune had blown, and over whose creation favorable planets had presided, and for whom a star of good fortune had acted as a midwife. Then she called out to him, saying, "O Muslim, come and wrestle before the daybreak," and tucked up her sleeve, showing a forearm like fresh curd. The whole place was lighted up by its whiteness, and Sharkhan was dazzled by it. Then he bent forward and clapped his hand, and she did the like, and they took hold and grappled each other. He laid his hands on her slender waist, so that the tips of his fingers sank into the folds of her belly, and his limbs relaxed, and he stood in the stead of desire, for there was displayed to him a body in which languishment of hearts, and he felt a trembling like the Persian reed in the hurricane. His limbs relaxed, and he discovered himself weakening, as he had found a place that induced languor. So she lifted him up, and throwing him to the ground, sat down on his breast with buttocks like a hill of sand, for he was not master of his reason. Then she said to him, "O Muslim, is it lawful among you to kill Christians? What sayest thou to my killing thee?" "O my lady," replied he, "as for killing me, it is unlawful, for a prophet, whom Allah bless and preserve, hath forbidden the slaying of women and children, and old men and monks. Since this was revealed unto your prophet," rejoined she, "it behooves us to be even with him therein. So I rise, I give thee thy life, for beneficence is not lost upon men." Then she got off his breast, and he rose and brushed the earth from his head, ashamed at having been beaten by a crooked-ribbed woman. And she said to him, "Be not abashed, but indeed one who enters the land of the Greeks in quest of booty and to succor kings against kings. How comes it that there is no strength in him to defend himself against a woman?" "It was not lack of strength in me," replied he, "nor was it thy strength that overthrew me, but thy beauty. So if thou wilt grant me another bout, it will be of thy favor." She laughed and said, "I grant thee this, but these damsels have been long bound, and their arms and shoulders are weary, and it were fitting that I should loosen them, since this next bout may peradventure be a long one." Then she went up to the girls, and unbinding them, said to them in the Greek tongue, "Go and put yourself in safety, till I have brought to naught this Muslim's craving for you." So they went away, whilst Sharkhan looked at them, and they gazed at him and the young lady. Then she and he drew near again, and set breast against breast. But when he felt her belly against his strength failed him, and she, feeling this, lifted him in her arms swiftlier than the blinding lightning, and threw him to the ground. He fell on his back, and she said to him, "Rise, I give thee thy life a second time. I spared thee before for the sake of thy prophet, for he forbade the killing of women, and I do so this second time because of thy weakness and tender age and strangerhood. But I charge thee, if there be in the army sent by Sultan Umar ibn al-Numan to be the succor of the king of Constantinople, a stronger than thou, send him hither and tell him of me, for in wrestling there are divers kinds of strokes and tricks, such as feinting and the forehip and the back hip and the leg crick and the thigh twist, the first grip, the grapple, the seizing of legs, biting the thighs, cross buttocks, throws and the leg lock, and the jostle and the cross buttock." "By Allah, O my lady," replied Sharkhan, and indeed he was greatly incensed against her, "were I the chief al-Safidi, or Muhammad Kaimal, or Ibn al-Sadi in his prime, I had not observed the fashion thou namest, for by Allah, it was not by thy strength that thou overthrewest me, but by filling me with the desire of thy buttocks, because we people of Chaldea love great thighs, so that nor wit nor foresight was left in me. But now, if thou have a mind to try another fall with me, with my wits about me, I have a right to do this one bout more, by the rules of the game, for my presence of mind has now returned to me." "Hast thou not had enough of wrestling, O conquered one?" rejoined she. "Why do you want to try again? Loser," she taunted. "However, come if thou wilt, but know that this bout must be the last." Then they took hold of each other, and he set in earnest, and warded himself against being thrown down. So they strained a while, and the damsel found in him strength such as she had not before observed, and said to him, "O Muslim, thou art on thy guard." "Yes," replied he, "thou knowest that there remaineth but this bout, and after each of us will go his own way." She laughed, and he laughed too. Then she seized the opportunity to bore in upon him unawares, and gripping him by the thigh, threw him to the ground, so that he fell on his back. She laughed at him and said, "Thou art surely an eater of bran, for thou art like a Bedouin bonnet that falls at a touch, or a child's toy that a puff of air overturns. Out on thee, thou poor creature! Go back to the army of the Muslims, and send us other than thyself, for thou lackest thews, and cry us among the Arab and Persians and Turks and Medes and the Dailamis. Whoso has might in him, let him come to us." Then she made a spring and landed on the other side of the stream, and said to Sharkhan, laughing, "It goes to my heart to part with thee. Get thee to thy friends, O my lord, before the morning, lest the knights come upon thee and take thee on the points of their lances. Thou hast not strength enough to defend thee against women, so how couldst thou make head against men and cavaliers?" And she turned to go back to the monastery. Sharkhan was confounded, and called out to her, saying, "O my lady, wilt thou go away and leave the wretched stranger, the broken-hearted slave of love?" So she turned to him, laughing, and said, "What wouldest thou? I grant thy prayer. Have I set foot in thy country and tasted the sweetness of thy favour?" replied Sharkhan, "and I shall return without eating of thy victual and tasting thy hospitality. How can I tread on your land and taste the sweets of your kindness, and then go back without eating your food? Indeed, I am become one of thy servitors." She said, "None but the base refuse hospitality. On my head and eyes be it. Do me the favor to mount and ride along the bank of the stream, abreast of me, for thou art my guest." At this Sharkhan rejoiced, and, hastening back to his horse, mounted and rode along the river bank, keeping abreast of her, till he came to a drawbridge that hung by pulleys and chains of steel, made fast with hooks and padlocks. Here stood the 10 damsels, awaiting the lady, who spoke to one of them in the Greek tongue, and said to her, "Go to him, take his horse's rein, and bring him over to the monastery." So she went up to Sharkhan and led him over the bridge to the other side, and he followed her, amazed at what he saw, and saying in himself, "Would the Vizier Dandan were with me to look on these fair faces with his own eyes." Then he turned to the young lady and said to her, "O wonder of beauty, now art thou doubly bound to me, firstly by the bond of comradeship, and secondly for that thou carriest me to thy house, and I accept of thy hospitality, and am at thy disposal and under thy protection. So do me the favor to go with me to the land of Islam, where thou shalt look upon many a lion-hearted prince and know who I am." His speech angered her, and she said to him, "By the virtue of the Messiah, thou art keen of wit with me, but I see now what depravity is in thy heart, and how thou allowest thyself to say a thing that proves thee a traitor. By the truth of the Messiah, I thought that you were a man of sound intelligence. How should I do what thou sayest, when I know that if I come to thy Sultan Umar ibn al-Numan, I should never win free of him, for he has not the like of me among his women, nor in his palace, all lord of Baghdad and Khorasan as he is, with his 12 palaces in number as the months of the year, and his concubines therein in the number as the days thereof. And if I come to him, he will not respect me, for that ye hold it lawful to take possession of the like of me, as it is said in your scripture, that which your right hand possesses. So how canst thou speak thus to me? As for thy saying, thou shalt look upon the champion of the Muslims, by the Messiah, thou sayest that which is not true, for I saw your army when it reached our country these 2 days ago, and I did not see that your ordinance was that of kings, but beheld you only as a rabble of men collected together. I saw no signs that they had been trained by kings, rather they looked like a collection of scattered groups. And as for thy saying, thou shalt know who I am, I did not show thee courtesy of any intent to honor thee, but out of pride in myself, and to add to my own glory. And the like of thee should not say this to the like of me, even though thou be Sharkhan himself, Sultan Umar ibn al-Numan's son, who is renowned in these days." "And dost thou know Sharkhan?" asked he. "Yes," replied she, "and I know of his coming with an army of 10,000 horse, for that he was sent by his father with these troops to the succor of the king of Constantinople." "O my lady," rejoined Sharkhan, "I conjure thee, as thou believest in thy religion, tell me the cause of all this, that I may know truth from falsehood, and with whom the fault lies." "By the virtue of thy faith," replied she, "were it not that I fear lest the news of me be bruited abroad, that I am the daughter of the Greeks, I would adventure myself and sally forth against the 10,000 horse and kill their chief, the Vizier Dandan, and take their champion, Sharkhan. Nor would there be any reproach to me in this, for I have read books and know the Arabic language, and have studied good breeding and polite letters. But I have no need to want my own prowess to thee, for thou hast tasted of my quality, and proved my strength and skill, and preeminence in wrestling. Nor if Sharkhan himself had been in thy place to-night, and it had been said to him, leap this river, could he have done so. And I would wish well that the Messiah would throw him into my hands here in this monastery, that I may go forth to him in the habit of a man, and pull him from his saddle, and take him prisoner, and lay him in fetters. Night 48. Morning now dawned, and Scheherazade broke off from what she had been allowed to say. Then, when it was the 48th night, she continued, I have heard, O auspicious Shahanshah, that Sharkhan listened to the Christian girl saying, if I had Sharkhan here, I would come out against him dressed as a man, capture him as he sat in his saddle, and put him in chains. When Sharkhan heard this, pride and heat and warlike jealousy overcame him, and he was minded to discover himself and lay violent hands on her, but her beauty held him back from her, and he repeated the following verse. Their charms, whatever fault the fair commits, 1,000 intercessors bring for it. So she went up, and he after her, whilst he looked at her back, and saw her buttocks smiting against each other like the billows in the troubled sea, and he recited the following verses. In her face an advocate harbours, who blots out her every fault from the hearts of mankind, for he is mighty to intercede. Whenas I look at her face, I cry in my wonder aloud, the moon of the skies in the night of her full is risen indeed. If the Ifrit of Belkis himself should wrestle a fall with her, her charms would throw him forthright for all his strength and speed. He also recited these lines. In her face is worthy intercession, erasing her wrongdoing from the hearts to which it pleads. At the sight of her I exclaim in wonder, a full moon has risen on a perfect night. Were the Queen of Sheba's Ifrit to wrestle with her, for all this reported strength, he would promptly be thrown down. They went on till they reached a vaulted gate, arched out with marble. This she opened and entered with Sharkhan into a long vestibule, vaulted with 10 arches, from each of which hung a lamp of crystal, shining like the rays of the sun. The damsels met her at the end of the vestibule, bearing perfumed flambeaux, and having on their heads kerchiefs embroidered with all manner of jewels, and went on before till they came to the inward of the monastery, where Sharkhan saw couches set up all around, facing one another, and overhung with curtains spangled with gold. The floor was paved with all kinds of variegated marbles, and in the midst was a basin of water, with 24 sprouts of gold around it, from which issued water like liquid silver, whilst at the upper end stood a throne covered with silks of royal purple. Then said the damsel, O my lord, mount this throne. So he seated himself on it, and she withdrew. And when she had been absent a while, he asked the servants of her, and they said, She hath gone to her sleeping chamber, but we will serve thee as thou shalt order. So they set before him rare meats. He ate till he was satisfied, when they brought him a basin of gold and a ewer of silver, and he washed his hands. Are you interested in getting the book you just published reviewed? Writing some piece of literature and need help getting it out there and promoted? Interested in sharing what piece of literature we should cover next? Well, fret not. In the Great Khan's Tent is now available on Patreon, where your contribution can help in growing this podcast. For as low as $3 a month, a price less than a good, and I mean good, cup of coffee, you can help contribute to the growth of this podcast. Every bit helps, but as always, it is not necessary to do so, but will be appreciated. Find the Patreon link on our website, on our social media accounts, or email us and we can send it to you. Thank you. Welcome to the vocabulary section for this episode. First, let's look at some of the terms used in this episode. Fourth part means 1/4. Meads means a meadow. A noise is to talk about or make known publicly. Girdle is a belt or cord worn around the waist. Embroidered means decorated with patterns sewn with thread. Midmost is situated in the middle or nearest to the middle. Enclosure, an area that is sealed off with an artificial or natural barrier. There nigh, near that person or place or thing. Tress, a long lock of a woman's hair. Ringleted, hanging in corkscrew-shaped curls. Loveliness, the quality of being very beautiful or attractive. Before or in time. Wanton, deliberate or sexually unrestrained. Dahat al-Dahawai means lady of calamities or mistress of disaster. Baggage, a cheeky or disagreeable girl or woman. Hummock means a hillock, knoll, or mound. Anemones, genre of flowering plants in the buttercup family. Breech, a person's buttocks. Gullet, another name for the esophagus. Surety, a person who takes responsibility for another's performance or an undertaking. Brandished, wave or flourished as a threat or in anger or excitement. 6 cubits is 9 feet. Losel, a worthless person. Qadi, a Muslim judge who interprets and administers the religious law of Islam. Reverie, a state of being pleasantly lost in one's thoughts, a daydream. While water means sperm. Zephyrs, a soft, gentle breeze. Chaldea, another name for Iraqis. Bran, pieces of grain husk separated from flour after milling. Medes, a member of an Iranian peoples. Victual means food or provisions. Comradeship, the company and friends of others with common aims. Belkis, the Queen of Sheba first mentioned in the Hebrew Bible. The kingdom existed in the modern state of Yemen. Vestibule, an antechamber, hall, or lobby next to the door of a building. Vaulted, having arched roofs or roofs. Flambeaux, a flaming torch. Kerchiefs, a piece of fabric used to cover the head or worn tied around the neck. Variegated, exhibiting different colors, especially as irregular patches or streaks. Ewer, a large jug with a wide mouth formerly used for carrying water for someone to wash in. Sore, angry because you feel you have been unfairly treated. Commandment, a divine rule or command or mandate. Curd, a soft white substance formed when milk sours, used as the basis for cheese. Beneficence, an act of charity, mercy, and kindness. Fetters, a chain or manacle used to restrain a prisoner. Intercessors, a person who intervenes on behalf of another, especially by a prayer. Billows, a fabric that is filled with air and swells outward. Harbors, keep a thought or feeling in one's mind, especially secretly. Now let's look at some of the vocabulary used in this episode. Spur, a thing that prompts or encourages someone, an incentive. Drowsiness, a feeling of being sleepy and lethargic or sleepiness. Smote, strike with a firm blow. Confounded, used for emphasis, especially to express anger or annoyance. Ravishes, seize and carry off someone by force. Fared, travel or perform in a specific way in a particular situation or over a particular period of time. Espied, catch sight of. Handsome, well made, imposing, and of obvious quality, substantial. Frisking, to move around in a happy, energetic way. Fairer, impartial and just without favoritism or discrimination. Wroth, angry or wrathful. Dust, archaic second person singular present of do. Loathly, causing hatred or disgust or repulsive. Hoisted, raise or haul up. Doubtless, used to indicate the speaker's belief that a statement is certain to be given what is known about the situation. Strayed, move away aimlessly from a group or from the right course or place. Purchase, obtain or achieve with effort or suffering. Anon, immediately or at once. Sufficeth, to meet or satisfy a need or to be sufficient. Ought, anything at all. Perfidy, deceitfulness or untrustworthiness. Impose, force something unwelcome or unfamiliar to be accepted or put in place. Deemest, to come to think or judge. Wherewith, with or by which. Beset, of a problem or difficulty, trouble or threaten persistently. Solicitude, care or concern for someone or something. Behooves, a duty or responsibility for someone to do something or is incumbent on. Abashed, embarrassed, disconcerted, or ashamed. Succor, assistance and support in times of hardship and distress. Pre-adventure means perhaps. Ought means nothing. Swiftlier, comparative form of swiftly. Strangerhood, the quality or state of being a stranger. Divers, of varying types or several. Foresight, the ability to predict or the action of predicting what will happen or be needed in the future. Warded, guarded or to protect. Bore, make one's way through. Base, denoting or befitting a person of low social class. Depravity, moral corruption or weakness. Bruited, spread a report or rumor widely. Vaunt, boast about or praise something especially excessively. Prowess, skill or expertise in a particular activity or field. Forthright, direct and outspoken, straightforward and honest. In the Great Khan's Tent is now available on Ko-fi. If you are interested in supporting this podcast, please click on the link available on our many social media platforms or email us. Why not donate to our Ko-fi to show your appreciation? Every bit helps, and we thank you for your continued support. We love that our listeners love listening to us. This episode has been written, edited, and produced by Saf Beg. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a wonderful day and or night. And may the journeys on which you are set upon be fruitful. Thank you for listening.